I guess about a year ago or so, there was a comment that I saw on Reddit. There was a big page about it. There was somebody that left this comment. It said, and this was in UFO Reddit. I'll leave the link to this so you can see it. It says the Pentagon won't say UFOs are non-human tech. They want the public to conclude this on their own by ruling out every other possibility. That could be true. I don't know, because I mean, it really does seem like it's true. I mean, anyone who has a logical thinking brain, I mean, and you put everything together, you should be able to figure that out. I don't think they want. I think they're this whole this slow disclosure that started in 2017 that now seems to be getting reeled back in a little bit, right? I think, yeah, I mean, the information that was presented, I mean, anybody who has a logical thinking brain, I mean, unless you're one of these people who subscribe to the debunkers out there who keep filling your head with horse dump, right? If you're one of those brainwashed lemmings, unless you're one of those people, right? And a person who doesn't have a logical brain and you're part of the debunker cult, right? Then you won't be able to figure it out. But people who have brains in their heads and who aren't lemmings and who could think for themselves could make that conclusion based on some of the things that happen. I mean, it's logical. It does make sense, really. And there was a comment here that was posted. The person who, the user who posted this was named Jairus Marker, and then he had this comment from Matthew Ratzloff. It says, the United States Navy just admitted, this is the Matthew Ratzloff comment. It says, the United States Navy just admitted that we do not have air superiority in our own airspace. Now, let me just stop there for a second. Okay, this is at the time when some of these report was coming out, and basically they were telling there was objects that seemed to defy, conventional aircraft. And so, that's what they were saying. Anyway, continuing, it says, then they followed up that statement of fact by floating the possibility that China or Russia have somehow leapfrogged our technology by more than 100 years, and that they have had this technology since at least the mid-2000s, which would represent an unprecedented and utterly catastrophic United States military and intelligence failure. Of course, having that technology since the 2000s implies that they would have begun developing it no later than the 1990s. Given the state of both countries at the time, and the fact that China just recently unveiled their new J-20 fighter jet with pride, widely regarded as being an inferior design based on stolen U.S. technology, and that Russia's military budget is less than 10% of U.S. spending, I find that conclusion improbable. And, of course, no one is in full-on panic mode. The report flatly states that this is not U.S. technology in origin. If true, it leaves only one plausible possibility. There you go. See, right there, I think that makes a lot of sense. Basically, there is only one possibility for some of these objects. Obviously, they're not man-made. I mean, they're not. I mean, when they keep saying Russia or China, right? Again, Russia and China, the military budget for the United States is way. I mean, you could put Russia, but all these countries together, and the military budget here is way more, right, than these other countries has. It's incredible. So, yeah, I mean, there is only one conclusion. I mean, if someone of a logical mind could look at this, I mean, I have a logical brain. So when you look at this report and you hear these stories like the Fravor story, and you see the videos, the gimbal video, and these different things, and the things that have been described in the report, there's only one conclusion. Obviously, this is something. Who's ever making this it couldn't be humans, because this is way beyond any technology that we're aware of. So obviously it's different. It must be non-human. It must be these alien beings that a lot of people have talked about seeing before, and some people have said they've been abducted by them, right? That's what it is. It must be the same kind of craft that people reported they've seen landing in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? And little beings walking around. The same kind of craft that when Lonnie Zamora in 1964 saw landed in outside Socorro, New Mexico, in the desert out there, landing with two little diminutive beings walking around, and then it floated away with no sound. That's what it is. It's actually, these are alien. I mean, really, right? That's the conclusion. I mean, there is no other conclusion. These things are beings from someplace else. They're not humans, right? They're not human beings. Now, again, I know there's this. We get bogged down. There's a lot of people who want to get bogged down into whether they're interdimensional or extra dimensional or ultra dimensional or this or that, or maybe they're living here the whole time and all that. Hey, let's just keep with. Let's make it. for the sake of keeping this uncomplicated, right? Let's just stick with extraterrestrial for now, because I mean it is. I mean, these things have been tracked. These objects have been tracked coming in from deep outer space, right, by NORAD over the decades. So apparently they're coming from someplace else. I mean, right? I mean, if they were here the whole time, you think we would have? They'd have their own little cities or something, right? I mean, what are they doing? Just living under the ocean the whole time? I think they're hiding in the oceans, right? And probably other places underground somewhere, and probably hanging around on the dark side of the moon, right? Or just floating around in space in motherships. I mean, they're here. Obviously, they're here from someplace else. Let's just use extraterrestrial as a placeholder, though, for the time being. We'll figure it. We'll work everything else out later on, right? We don't need to be worried about where they came from. I just think let's just stick with extraterrestrial for now to keep it so we don't complicate it too much, right? We'll figure that other part out later. But the fact is that there's something here that's non-human. That's the thing. I mean, and the information that was provided since this slow disclosure started, right, in 2017, the information provided basically clearly tells you. Basically, they're telling you something. In fact, I believe one of the earlier, I think the very first podcast I did, when I first started this a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, I can't remember now. I think the very first one I did was something. I think it was called the Pentagon is trying to tell you something. Yeah, I think that that was my first idea at that time. They're trying to tell you something. They were somebody in the Pentagon at that time was trying to tell you something. But yet we have a whole bunch of people who don't have the ability to think logically. Their brains don't work that way. And then some people are subconsciously, they don't want to think logically, and they make themselves. They don't want to accept this reality, so then they'll think illogically, deliberately, and maybe even subconsciously, basically because they don't want to accept the reality of the situation. But the reality is yes, the information that we've been provided with already, right, from the government over the last 5 years, right, in the reports, basically clearly shows we're dealing with an extraterrestrial intelligence here, when it's not human beings, because we don't have these kind of objects that they're flying around in defy any kind of known physics. Okay, so it's obvious. It's an obvious thing, right? So whether you want to live your life living in this fantasy world, or whether you want to live your life living in a reality, you could look at this information and make a logical conclusion based on that without waiting. I mean, I would love, of course, I'm always here complaining about, I'd like to have it's more of a historical type thing for me. I want all the evidence, and plus I'm interested into knowing what the government knows. I know they know something. I know they've been lying for a long time, and I know a lot of the secret majestic 12 group is continuing to try to keep this secret, right? They're trying to still maintain their power over this whole reality, right? And I don't know who gave them this, right? But it's time to end that. So I'm interested in knowing what they know. Not everything, of course. I don't want to know about what kind of leaps and discoveries they made during their reverse engineering programs. That's okay. Keep that secret, right? Keep that secret. But I do want to know about the aliens themselves, what they look like. I want to see some real pictures, real film, right? I want to see images from the actual images that were taken from different crashes over the years, right? I want to know what the government knows, right? I want to see some of the good stuff, the good film and video that's been taken over the years. I want to know more about it, right? I want to see documentaries on TV with actual people who talking about this openly without acting like it's a secret, right? I want to see stuff like that. I want to move forward. I want to see just the world move forward a little bit on this, right? Get over the hump and let's just accept the reality and move forward. Unfortunately, even with that information was released, a lot of the skeptics out there, for some reason, are a little bit too skeptical. I don't know. They have issues. Again, some of them just can't think logically. There's people out there with an inability to use logical thought, and that's why we need to have. That's another reason why we need, right, to have the government get to the bottom of this, get the actual proof and present it to the world. That's why, so we can get over that hump and there's no more arguments, right? That's what we need to do.